Well, good morning, everybody. I'm Lord Althen Roffinson. I am the current Arts and Science Champion to His Majesty Uller, who has graced us with his presence today. I live in the Barony of Flaming Griffin here in the Midrealm. I am a craftsman foremost. I do enjoy fighting and such, but most people knows me as a craftsman. I do woodworking. I am a blacksmith, bladesmith, really enjoy leatherworking as well. I focus most of my studies within the Norse culture, Norway, 10th and 11th century, with a special interest in tools, knives, and obviously making chests. So that's what this class is about, the Norse boarded chests, or Viking chests, as many people call them. I typically choose not to use the word Viking because Viking was more profession. But I got into doing chests because of my research into tools. There's a find from 1936 that was found in Gotland, Sweden, called the Mastermer chest. It was a wonderful find full of tools. And as I started doing my research, I fell in love with the box itself and decided that I was going to make one myself, and started digging into researching the joinery that was used to create the box. And as I started doing that research, I realized, a lot of us build wooden boxes, but we don't build them with the same detail and the same joinery that the Norse used. So I came up with this chest to help people build a stronger box with less integrity issues that a standard like 6-board chest has. As I said before, Viking chests, sea chests, boarded chests, these are all names that you'll commonly come across when doing research in this subject. They're all names that refer to a medium to large wooden 6-panel box with a hinged lid. The problem with the typical style of 6-boarded chest that we see throughout Europe during the Viking Age is integrity issues because of the contradicting grain orientation. And what the Norse craftsmen did with using the joinery that they did is they they remedied a lot of these issues. So most of the extant pieces we have dating before the 11th centuries, you see common design features. They all, and it really doesn't matter from what area of Scandinavia they're found. So Denmark, Norway, Sweden, even when you get into some of the areas that they controlled in England and Ireland, you see that most of them have inward sloped sides. They're a trapezoidal shape. They have mortised bottoms that go through the sideboards. And then you also see that they have shoulder joints between the sideboards and the inboards. And that the inboards extend down past the face boards to create legs to keep the bottoms up off the chest up off of the ground. So I am going to share my screen now. So these 5 chests, these are some of the best examples, or my favorite examples, of the Viking age chests from before the 11th century, Norse style chests from before the 11th century. We're going to take a deeper look at each one of these, look at the common features. This is giving us a look at, honestly, almost a 300-year period, but it's fascinating how similar the design over a 300-year period is, and across, different regions, countries, how, obviously they must have been saving, or sharing the their information. So the first one we're going to look at, the Hedeby harbor chest. It's called such because it was literally found in the harbor at Hedeby. They believe it was probably stolen and busted open, as it was found with a rock in it, weighing it down. So somebody probably threw it off of a boat or off of a pier, trying to hide the evidence of their crime. Unfortunately, this one, we don't have a date for it, as there was no other items around it to use in archaeological context to date it. But you see, it is this trapezoidal shape that that I was talking about. That's pretty common with all of these. It's the bottom of it has the mortise joints coming through the end boards. This one, it's made of white oak. That's also between all 5 of the ones we're going to talk about today is pretty common. This one's put together with iron nails. The boards are secured together with iron nails. This one has a couple features that the other ones don't, the bottom edge of the face boards is got a curve to it, and it's just a decorative element, but it still has the raised floor and bottom board, and keeps the bottom of the chest up off the ground. This one also has decorative parallel lines on all 4 sides, the vertical sides of it, carved into it. Just a decorative element that you don't see, like on the Massmer chest that we'll talk about in a minute. You don't see any kind of carving or anything like that. Unfortunately, with this one, all the hardware was missing, but you can see on the lid there's 2 spots carved out for the hasps that went to a lock. Because the hole in the front, we could speculate that it was a lock of what is called a bolt with a vertical lift spring style. We'll see that in some of these other chests that we're going to talk about as well. This one also has a very high arched lid. That lid is literally just part of a tree trunk that was hollowed out on the inside, which helps reduce weight of the lid and also increases your storage space inside. So this is the Massmer chest. This is the one that kind of really kicked off my passion for chests. It dates to around 1000 Common Era. It was found in Sweden. It's also of trapezoidal shape. Instead of being assembled with iron nails, this one was actually put together with wooden nails, or like a carved wooden peg that's driven into a drilled hole. It also has the mortised bottom into the end boards. It has the slide bolt with vertical lift spring style lock. Has 2 hinges on the back that are what I call a hook and eye style. I don't honestly know. I've never seen like a universal name system for the different types of hinges. It may be out there. I just haven't found it. So I just call it a hook and eye style. And we will talk about the styles in a little bit as well. The next 3 are the Ozberg Ship chests. The Ozberg Ship burial from Norway, Ozberg, Norway. It's dated to somewhere between 800 and 850. This one is the big one. It comes in at around 108 centimeters in length, which translates to about 44.5 inches. It's a pretty big, pretty long chest. It's also about 15 inches high. It's a lovely chest. As you can see here, same design features, the trapezoidal shape. Because it's larger, it has 3 hasps on the lock, and it has 9 hinges on the back. And then the entire chest is decorated in iron bands that are affixed to the wooden chest with tinned head nails. So the then they're iron nails with a tin coating on the head, so it gives it a nice silver decorative finish. The next chest is Ozberg 156. Unfortunately, this one, what you see is what you get. There's no lid, there's no front panel, but it's very similar, a little bit smaller, but very similar in build to the 149. It has, but instead of having the strips of iron, it's actually covered in iron sheeting. And then we get to the Ozberg 178. It's a much simpler design, and it has some different design features, but then some that are similar. It's trapezoidal. It has the mortised floorboards going through the side. It has a shoulder joint, but as you'll see, but it's really more of a lap joint versus a shoulder joint because it doesn't cut into those face boards. And also, instead of having an arched lid like the other four, well, we know that the 3 did, probably the 4 did. This has a flat lid, and this flat lid actually sat between the end boards. It didn't sit on top. If you look at the left side of this image, you'll see how the end board sticks up past the front and the backboard, and that allowed the lid to sit in between them. This particular type of chest is what is commonly referred to as a C chest. You'll hear a lot of people talk about the fact that they sat on their chests to row. I've also read articles of people that have tried this and say, no, it's not possible. They move around too much on the decks of the ships, and a lot of times, depending on how the ships were built, there's no place to put them. More than likely, the reason that they were shaped like this and built like this was so that they could stack them easier. But as you can see from these 5 examples, there's a lot of commonality between the designs, and there are numerous other findings from the Viking Age that all share a lot of these elements. They all tend to be the trapezoidal shape. With the inboards and the faceboard slanting inwards, and that slant is typically around a 5-degree angle. But in later, as you move out of the Viking Age, get past the 11th century, we start seeing the chests become more straight-sided. Chests were, a common item in Norse culture and in most European culture. So, but what we see is as it influences and contact with the rest of Europe expands and the Norse culture changes and becomes more European, so does the way they're manufacturing their chests, the way they're crafting their chests. You start seeing the straight sides, and it just, they start looking more like the mainland Europe. So as I mentioned before, all of these chests, they were made of oak, but we also have examples that have been found that are made of pine, beech. These were made from woods available in their areas and constructed of rived lumber. Riving is a technique to make lumber, which is unlike sawing wood into boards. They split it along the grain using an axe to start, and then driving wedges in it and literally splitting logs into boards. They would, then you cut them with saws to length and hew them to thickness using axes and wood planes. Once they got them to the thickness they wanted, they would use the ring orientation of the boards and line it so that the front and back boards, as the front and back and end boards dried, that they would pull tighter into the bottom board and actually make a more solid chest. The shoulder joints between the inboards and the front boards, those help to eliminate bowing of the boards. And then, and then they would fasten it all together with nails, whether they were iron or wooden nails. On the Massmer chest, which is the one I've done the most research on, there was also a rabbet joint along the bottom edge of your face boards, your front and back boards, that the bottom board sat into, that also helped keep everything tighter together. This joinery would have been made using chisels and rasps. Within the Massmer chest, with the tools that were found in it, we see wood chisels, we see wood rasps, both straight and offset, which would be perfect for creating things like dados, where you're cutting a groove in. Today we would typically use a router or a dado blade on a table saw or something like that, but they came up with this idea of offsetting a chisel so that they could create these this trough-like groove in the wood. Also, another common feature was the thicker lid that was hollowed out in a trough-like manner. That would have been done using a curved draw knife and possibly adze to kind of get it started. Like I said before, the Ozberg chest, though, didn't have a rounded lid. I've read theories where, again, going back to the sea chest, that the idea was that the rounded lid helped shed water off of them, and that's very possibly true. I can tell you from personal experience that rounded lid also makes it much more comfortable to sit on. Chests make a very convenient seat in a campsite. So what their reasoning for rounding those lids are, I don't exactly know, but maybe it was shedding water. Maybe it was just so that the edge of that board didn't pinch the backs of their legs if they were using it to sit on. All of these chests have iron hinges, and they all have locks. Whether or not it's a built-in lock like we see on these examples, or a hasp that it will accept a padlock, the evidence that securing items was very important to the Norse people. We see in the Eddas, people are in the sagas, I should say. Whoops, did I just really screw things up here? Yeah. Okay, sorry about that. We see, we hear people talk about, thieves and stuff like that, and so it's pretty easy to conclude that the importance of securing one's wealth was quite important to the Norse people. So this here is a quick little sketch I did of the types of hinges that we see on these 5 chests. They're typical throughout the period. The one on the left is your standard barrel hinge. It's like the style hinges we have that we still use on doors today in our houses. I put this one in here because on the Hedeby chest, there was a recreation of it done for the Hedeby Museum, and that they chose to use the barrel style hinge for that reconstruction. I've yet to find what type of evidence that they had to suggest that it had a barrel hinge. I haven't It's just what they used. So I decided to put that in here just because barrel hinges were used during this period, though I haven't seen them used on another large style chest. The middle one, again, the name that I use for it is the hook and loop style. And it, the top, trying to think how to describe this best. So it's driven into the wood. The top part that you see there is driven into the edge of the back edge of the lid. The top is driven down into the lid. The back, the loop part of it is driven into the backboard, and then there's a U-style nail that helps secure that, and that's driven through and then clinched over. And then the one on the right hand side is the loop and eye style. This would have been secured with just nails driven through the chest and clinched over. Real quick, just a little personal addition. The style on the right hand side was the first style I ever made, and it's actually what got me into blacksmithing. His Excellency, Sir Timothy, is on here today, and he's the one that taught me how to make these, and it kind of kicked off my journey on blacksmithing and getting into more period chests. So thank you for that, Your Excellency. So here we see, yeah, thank you. So here you see this is what I was talking about with the bolt style lock with the vertical lift spring. You see the bolt so the way this works is the key is put through an opening on the front plate, and as it's turned, there's teeth, and I'll show you a key here in a second, but the teeth on the key lift the spring up. So in the upper image, you can see the arrows. It's lifting the spring up. So it's resting against like a stop plate on the bolt. And as it's lifted up, it now allows the key to move that bolt. So the key becomes your slide handle. And as you slide it to the left, it releases the loops on the hasp that are also coming through the face of the lock, and you can open the lid. And then to relock it, the reverse happens. You use the key to slide the bolt back. When you untwist it, allows the spring to drop back down in place, and your chest is locked. The lock on the Ozberg 178, it was a much simpler lock. So it just has a cutout on the front of it with like a springed hasp that drops down off the lid. It just catches in there, and then the key literally goes in and pushes that spring out of the way. Here we can see some of the tools in the Massimo chest. This is just a small example of those tools. I picked these because these were some of the ironworking and woodworking tools that could have likely been used to build a chest. They're one of the beautiful things about this find was it gave us so much information about the tools used in woodworking and metalworking. Also within the chest were found lock parts, not lock parts like on any of the chests that we're talking about today, but they appear to be locks for chests. And so because of all the things we find in that chest, the craftsman that owned the Massimo tool chest may very well have built chests as part of his profession. Though there are other tools in there that say that he did other things. He probably worked also in coppers and stuff like that, making things like pots. And then we also see as you can see in this image on the left-hand side, much larger spoon bits. Those are basically drill bits that would have been used in larger construction projects, such as maybe homes or even ships. You know, some of those auger bits are over an inch, would make a hole over an inch in diameter, which would be handy in like timber frame type construction. So it's really easy to speculate that, you know, this craftsman that owned this chest did build chests. So next, okay, well, before we move on this, I'm going to unshare my screen. And I was talking about, I want to show you guys a few things that I have here in person. So this key here, I don't know if you can see that very well. There we go. You can see how the key shaped. This is what I was talking about. As the key goes into that lock and it rotates up, those teeth there are what engage that spring and push it up out of the way. And then you use the key as a handle. That's the reason why this one, well, blocking it on the wrong side. That's the reason this key here is so long, is that I like to have that leverage. Also, I was talking about on the one style lock, or I'm sorry, hinge, on the one style hinge, there was a U-shaped nail. So this one may be really difficult to see because it's little. So yeah, I don't know if it's going to show up that well. But so that's the hinge that goes into the back of the chest. And then you've got this U-shaped nail that goes around it. Yeah, you can kind of see that. And then as it goes through, the ends of the nail, this is a completely different nail, but the ends of the nail get bent over and clenched back into the wood so that it can't pull back out. I think you can see that. So I thought I'd share that real quick. And then at the end, I'll also share a little bit more about how the lock of the 178 chest works, because I built a little example of it. So at this point, do we have any questions? Anybody?
No, I'm really enjoying it so far.
Okay.
Just as a quick note, in my younger days, I was interested in 1800s whaling ships, and they had very similar chests, even then, the seagoing chests. And one of the issues that you pointed out was that the sides are sloped like yay, and that was indeed so that they could be stacked. But in the whaling period, people would want to get into their chest without having to dismantle the stack, so they moved the door to the front.
Oh, that's smart. That's very smart. Okay, well, if we don't have any more questions, the next portion, we're actually going to talk about how to build your own chest. So this, let's see, I got to try to share this slideshow again. There we go.
Oh, it looks like somebody asked a question.
Oh, did I miss that?
Oh,
in the chat.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, this style construction would also be used in 800 to 900s Birka Sweden chests. Interestingly, on that, so the Ozberg chest, which one is 149? Yeah, 149. It has on the hasps, it has these beautiful animal head kind of like terminals on the end. They're forged into it. Very unique. At least I thought it was. And just recently, I was doing some more research into other chests and found, and I believe it may have been from Birka, I know it was from Sweden, a smaller casket, which not to be confused with our modern day caskets that we put, that are 6 foot in length. These were just small, almost like reliquary style boxes. But it had the same style ends on the hasp. I couldn't find an image close up in the right angle, but it almost looked identical. It may have been identical, which stands to, asks whether or not those, and those chests date from the Ozberg's chests date from between 800 and 850. So were the ones that were found in the Ozberg ship made in Sweden? Was this chest that was found in Sweden made in Norway? We don't know. I don't know. Somebody probably does. They can look at the wood, but I hope that answers your question. So yeah, let's see. I gotta get this to move. There we go. And do this. All right. So this here is a nice little list of the things you need to make your own chest. Most of the steps that we're going to talk about is to make a straight side chest, which is a little bit out of Viking age period, or at the very end of it anyways. It's a little easier if you've never done this, and especially if you're newer to woodworking. It's a little easier to make the straight sided chest, but this will have all the same type of joinery that we talked about in the extant pieces. So you can use hand tools, you can use power tools. The idea behind this is to help you build a chest for your, to help make your day camp or your war camp look more period. We all need places to, oops, that's not what I was trying to do. We all need places to store stuff when we're at events, hide our modern things to make our worlds look a little bit more period. So the one thing I don't have on this list will be available in the handout at the end of the class. I'll give you some links, my email or my Facebook page where all the, I can either send it to you or you can get the handout. But the one thing that's not on this list that's very important to me is that there is no personal protective equipment listed here. Using tools, hand tools or power tools can be hazardous. Be safe, wear your safety glasses. If you're running power equipment, use hearing protection. If you're using sanders, consider wearing some kind of face mask. Wood dust can cause serious lung issues, and some of them can even be toxic. I know personally I've worked with some exotic woods, start sanding, doing some things, and then all of a sudden I notice my lips are tingling. It's a bad sign. It usually means there's something toxic in that type of wood and you shouldn't have been inhaling it. So once you have all your materials and your tools and stuff together, one of the first thing that well, before we get to that far, let's talk about the types of wood you might want to use. Period chests, your bigger chests were typically made of hardwoods, oak specifically. Working with hardwoods is going to be more costly, but you're also likely to get better results. Working with softwoods such as pine or whitewood, which is often called in your big box stores. Yeah, sometimes your results with cuts, and especially with routering and stuff like that, or if you're trying to do things with a chisel, it just doesn't turn out as well as with a good hardwood. But like I said, everybody has a budget, and sometimes a nice chunk of white oak just isn't in the budget for for the project. The way I start though with any project is I always take and I true up one of the ends of the dimensional lumber, get a good 90-degree end established to make all my measurements off of. It really stinks if you're if you want to start off of that factory edge and then everything ends up slanted or off a little bit. So I suggest truing up one of your ends and then start laying out your measurements. I start by measuring and marking the height of my end boards, which that length needs to be a minimum, in my opinion, a minimum of 1 inch, and can be longer, longer than the width of your stock material. So if you're using a 10-inch board, which dimensional lumber is going to be about 9¼ 9½ inches. You're going to want to measure your inboards to say 10½ inches or longer. That extra length is going to create the legs that go down below your bottom board to keep your chest up off the ground. Your measure and mark once you get those done and cut, then you'll move on to marking your face boards, your front and your back board. They can be whatever length you want, but typically you're going to want to make a rectangle, so longer than the width of your inboards. And then you're going to cut those and you'll have your perimeter boards now set up. I like to cut each board at a time. That way I'm not having to worry about which side of the board I'm cutting or which side of the line I'm cutting on and whether or not all the boards end up the same length. I measure, cut, measure, cut, measure, cut, not measure a whole bunch of lines and then try to cut them out. The bottom and the lid, you can cut them now. A lot of times I'll wait until the end to cut them, but the two pieces for your top and bottom need to be as long as your front and back boards. So you got, make sure that if you're trying to do everything in one board, you're going to need to calculate that out, or make sure you have enough extra material that you have, two board, if you have two boards, make sure you have enough material left over to, for your bottom and your top. Let's see. So at this point, you should have something that looks like this. You can see the two inboards on the left and right. And then here you see the 4 long boards. That's your top, your bottom, back, and front boards.
Pardon the interruption, 10-minute warning, 10-minute warning.
Oh, we've burned up that much time? Wow, okay. I'm going to try to burn through this then. So here, this is how you're going to lay out your shoulder joints. The way I typically do it is about halfway through the length of my face boards. You're going to mark those. You're going to cut them out. Handsaw or jigsaw works best, or if you have a nice bandsaw, that also works really well. But let's get into the real more important. So once you get your shoulder joints out, you got something like this. I'm going really fast. I'm sorry. I didn't realize I'd burn up so much time. But we're going to get on to the rabbit joints and the dado joints. Those are the ones that really help create the strength in this style chest, and are the ones that most people leave out. So here you can see the lines. This is how you're going, the red lines are how you're going to mark the boards. You see on the end boards, we have like a rectangle. That's pretty important. You want to make sure you're not going all the way to the ends. This is the dado. So it's more of a trough in there. You'll see along the bottom of the face boards, that's your rabbit. And then we're creating kind of a rabbit lap joint on these ears for the shoulder joints. I know the Massimo chest was built this way. I do not know whether or not this kind of rabbited lap joint on the shoulders was used in the other joints. In the other chests that we talked about earlier. So basically, with your rabbited joints, you're going to take out half of the thickness of your material. So if you're using an S4S lumber, it typically comes in a 3/4 inch thickness. So you're going to be removing 3/8 of an inch of thickness out of those joints. And you're going to do that on the inside. So if you have one side of the board that looks better than the other, choose the worst looking side. That becomes the inside of your box. So once you get those cut out, so on the face boards, you can see here, these rabbits are cut out half of the thickness. And then here you can see we've created that trough dado joint on the end boards. Unfortunately, I didn't take a picture of just the dado, but in the image, you'll also see that we've went ahead and marked and cut out the mortise for the mortise and tenon joints of the bottom board. The way I usually do this, I usually go with about a 2.5 inch opening. So I find the center of the board, and then I measure out 1.25 inches on each side. It gives me pretty sufficient a tendon and mortise joint. And then you can create that opening by drilling a hole and using a jigsaw to open it up, or you can use a chisel and a hammer and just take little layers out until you remove that. One of the things I've kind of skipped over is if you do want to create a trapezoidal shape, as you're laying out your boards, you need to factor in your angles and cut everything at an angle. But then also on your bottom and top boards, you're going to have to make sure all your edges are also cut at those angles. Really, I guess really on all the boards, because your end boards, because they're sitting on the ground, you've got to make sure that those bottom edges have that matching angle, whatever angle it is. Like I said, historically, that's about a 5-degree angle. Then we get into the bottom board. The image here, you can see we've cut the tendons into it. So because you've done that mortise, you're going to cut back whatever the depth of your mortise was. So if you took 3/8, I'm sorry, I'm saying mortise, I meant dado. If you took 3/8 of an inch out on the dado, you're also going to take out at least 3/8 of an inch off the end of the boards. So you're going to end up with a 3/8 inch long tendon that's going to go through those holes. If you choose to make a trapezoidal chest, I suggest adding a little bit extra to that, because your sides are going to be leaning in and changing the angle and stuff like that. So having a little extra is good. And then if you want it to be a flush and not sticking out past after you assemble the chest, you can use a saw to cut those flush with the inboards. How are we doing? I've got 5 more minutes. Okay. So then we're going to put the chest together. I start by mounting the hinges to the lid in the back, the backboard. Once, especially if it's smaller, if you're making a smaller version of the chest, once you get the chest together, it's really hard to get inside to cinch your hardware over. So I highly recommend this. Also, if you're doing any kind of lock mechanism on the front, it's easier to do it with the faceplate laying flat versus trying to work on the chest assembled. The way you're going to want to clamp your pieces together. If I'm building something just for taking to events and stuff, I will put it together with glue. With period examples, it's unclear if any kind of glues were used. A lot of these things were buried in the ground, or as in the case of the Hedeby chest, it was in a harbor for almost 1,000 years. That glue and evidence of glue doesn't typically survive, but it does make for a stronger project if you're going to be banging this thing around the back of a car and at events and stuff like that. Once the glue and stuff's set up, you can drive nails, iron nails, or you can use wooden pegs. If you're going to use iron nails, I suggest using actual nails that were forged, or there are some vendors that sell nails that look like they were forged. Rockler Supply being one of those. Let's see. Also, you can see a real nice little drawing. It was done by Stephen Lowe of the Massmer chest and how it was assembled, and with its wooden pegs going through these holes and stuff. Let's see. So this is the chest I built. It's all put together. You can see the hardware and stuff there. Unfortunately, we're not in person. This is a really cool chest. I have it sitting here, and if people want to hang out afterwards, I can show it to you. But it actually comes apart, so you can see the joinery. It was meant for an in-person class. Really hard to do with a camera. But at this point, you want to consider your finishing, whether or not you're going to put some kind of Danish oil or some boiled linseed oil and beeswax on it. I recommend putting something on it. It's going to make it last longer, make it a little less susceptible to the elements. And here we can see some of the hardware, like I was showing before. That brings us to another thing. If you're going to spend the time building a chest, and especially using period correct joinery, use period hardware. I've seen a lot of people put a lot of work into the woodwork, and then they go over to Lowe's and buy some cheap hinges off the shelf, put them on there, and they're like, look at my Viking chest. I'm like, it looks great, but the hardware looks like it came from Lowe's. I'm like, well, it did. I'm like, huh. With there's plenty of blacksmiths around. You can have you can talk to somebody to make you a set. Do like I did, have somebody teach you how to make a set. Or there's lots of people and vendors online that sell replica hardware, and it really makes a difference. Those little details really make the project. So sorry about rushing through the end of that. Is there any questions?
Alvin, could you show the chest behind you?
Yeah.
How does the hinge work again? How is it attached to the top board?
Okay. So yeah, let's see.
I'm not familiar with that hinge.
Yeah. So this was the style that was used on the Ozberg chest. Am I not sharing now?
No, we can see you. Yeah.
Okay. So it literally, the end of this bar has a right angle tapered end and is driven through the chest and then is cinched over on the inside of the chest. Clenched over. I'm saying cinched, it's clenched. So you can see, so that's the end of that top part of the hinge, and then the back of it curls over and is, can you see it like that? It curls over and is driven into the back edge of the chest. And then this part is kind of the same way, which this is this example. So that is bent over and is driven through, and then, and this is where having a chest that deconstructs comes in handy. So you can see on the inside, those bottom parts are driven through, and then that U-shaped nail is driven through and then also clenched over, which helps keep it pull out. The top part, I've on the smaller versions, I see it just like this, and then I've also seen them done mainly recreations. I haven't seen a period example, but some people will use that U nail and drive it over top of it like this to help, and then clench that around it to help also make this a more secure. Does that answer your question?
It does, but did you drive, when you put on the hinge on the top board, did you drive the back of it in first, or did you mount?
I did. Yes, okay. I drove it in, and so I did. I left the bend in it kind of large, okay, so that the angled part on the top part wasn't digging in as I was driving it in on the edge, and then hammered it down through. And I don't know, the way I like to do it is I like to, when I'm doing these and clenching things over, is I like to drive them down on a metal anvil or something like that, and it allows it to kind of clench over by itself.
Okay,
we lost you, Phil.
We lost you. There we go.
One question from the chat, and then we're going to have to wrap this up.
Okay.
The question is from Liz. I think you briefly mentioned this earlier. Do we know if some sort of hand plane was used in this period?
We do know that there were hand planes. There are examples. I don't have any actual example names off the top of my head, but we do know that they had hand planes. We, especially in shipbuilding, we see it used in shipbuilding. I know, see, I think, yeah, I know His Majesty's busy. He may have some more information on that, but I would be glad to do some more research into that to get you some actual examples, because that's one of my passions is period tools. So.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much. That was an excellent presentation. I didn't fall asleep at all.
Especially at the end, because I got all kind of crazy and had to go fast. So.